Yeah, so good morning, everyone, again. And we're now starting the Kickstart Your IT Career, where we'll be taking a look at the options available to us within IT and information management generally. There are many more options than those that we can discuss today. If we were to discuss the hundreds of different roles within IT or information management, we'd be here for over 24 hours because there are many. But one thing that I'd like to assure each and every one on this session today is that there is a place for you. Within the industry, we always talk about, or my peers, colleagues, professionals always talk about a skills shortage. That is that there are not enough professionals to fill the number of roles in IT that are available out there. But I don't believe that's actually the case. I believe that if our industry could be more open or more willing to hire interested professionals rather than just experienced professionals and skilled professionals, if the industry would be more open towards training interested professionals, of which I know very many professionals out there, or very many humans out there who are desiring a career in IT, then the industry wouldn't be talking about a skills shortage. But just rest assured that there is a place for you and me in this industry. And if you persist in trying to get in, then you will make it in. Just like a new driver on the roads, or even experienced drivers. There was once a day when that driver reached a decision to sign up for lessons, to get behind the wheel. Some drivers actually give up when they take a few lessons and they determine this is not for me. Some drivers actually take many lessons and they fail their tests on multiple occasions and they decide this is not for me. But the majority of drivers persist in taking their tests, regardless of the numbers or regardless of the number of times that they fail the test, until they pass. And then they drive for a lifetime. Some with accidents, some experience an accident and they give up on driving forever. And some experience an accident and they continue driving. Others never experience an accident. That is the same way that we should be handling our careers. Despite any setbacks, when we start studying towards a career in IT, we may sit exams and fail some exams. Some people may give up at that point. Some people may not choose to sit exams, but they get interviews. They break through into the industry, and then they get interviews and they give up when they don't promptly get their job of their dreams. Some people are made redundant very early on in their career, and they then give up, saying maybe this is not for me. But I'd just like to tell you that I've had many setbacks in my 25-year career, and yet I've had to persist and to keep going back because I know that this is something that I enjoy doing. So I've never once considered this is not for me because of a setback, because I haven't been hired after a very good interview. I've never once said this industry is not for me. I'm determined to work in this industry and to keep giving back, regardless of my circumstance, regardless of my experience. I'm really determined to keep giving back to my fellow humans, to try and get as many of us as possible to work in the industry, to fulfill our career goals. So don't give up, regardless of the number of times that you have tried and not quite made it, regardless of the number of times you've been made redundant, regardless of the number of knockbacks or setbacks you've had. Keep going, keep trying, keep believing that there is a space for you within this industry. There is a space for you, and one day your hard work and your persistence will pay off. That much I can assure you. Welcome to this session today, and it's being held in collaboration with the Moyosore Alade Hope Foundation, of which my spouse, Mr. Emmanuel Adebayo, is the CEO of that entity. And I'd like to give him a moment to introduce himself, to talk about his career in information technology, which has spanned over many years. So let's have Mr. Adebayo introducing himself. Thank you. You are on mute, thank you.
Sorry, sorry, thank you. Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that accolade, CEO and all those stuff. Thank you so much. Love you. Yes, so once again, good morning, everyone. As my wife has said, my name is Emmanuel Adebayo, and my career has spanned over IT over 30 years now, I think. And I started with Windows 3.0. I know people that are in IT, like I think Chi or somebody said that the person that said about the AX 400 and something like that. I started when we have HPUX 9000. You know, that time there's very massive computer like a room. But thank God we are where we are today. So yeah. Over the years, I've done so many things in IT. As my wife have said earlier on, there's nothing we cannot do as long as your mind is there that you can do it. You just need to determine. You be persistent. I've gone to many interviews that when I was coming in as an IT guy. That I was not, I was not taking. And there was one that when I first came to UK, the first interview that I went to do it. I will never forget it. I went to do it in Amersham. And when I got there, because when I was coming from Nigeria to this place, I did my CCNA. People that are in infrastructure, we know about Cisco. So I did my CCNA. And then I came back. And when I got to that interview, they gave me some stuff to do. I didn't know. I didn't know it, and it was like I was just coming on the train that day. I was feeling somehow, and but later I just have to go on eBay, buy some Cisco router, set up a lab for myself, and since then I have practical experience, and I started going on from there. So yes, over the years, information technology has evolved and has come a long way, producing some important things. So it has made the world to be a global village. So yes, let me just pass you back to my presenter so that you can start. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. And as my husband has said, things have evolved within the industry. And I started my career in 1999 after many years working as a PA. And when I started, I just started with the desire to work on a service desk, help desk it was called at the time, on a service desk where I could earn money, basically. earn a bit more money to what I was earning as a PA. I started off with the Microsoft certification, and funny enough, it was through that I actually met my husband on a Microsoft website in 2000 through my desire to start an IT career. Met him accidentally on a Microsoft website where we were learning for MCSEs at the time. And we've been together since then. And I've had my husband motivating me to keep striving to improve, not to compete, but to keep striving to improve, to contribute towards the industry. And I started when we had NT4. And again, a point of reassurance for each and every one of you here today. I remember when I went on a workshop for Windows, Windows, when they introduced Windows. This was around 1996 or so, when they actually introduced Windows, changing from those DOS machines and all of those. When the presenter, the trainer said, "Can you pick up your mouse?" This was the first time that I'd used a computer with a mouse on Windows. So I picked up my mouse like a remote control to point it towards the screen, because I didn't understand at the time that you would needed to roll the mouse on the desktop. So what I'm trying to allude to there is that I remember those days, or that day till date, and yet here I am today saying that I'm an experienced professional. So if you haven't picked up your mouse or pointed at your screen like a remote control, then you're in a good place. You're better off than me. So you will make it in the industry. So don't despair, regardless of what we discussed today. If you still feel that nothing has been presented here today that you're interested in, just book a phone call on the Ladder Back Down's website, a 30-minute free mentoring phone call, and I'll just discuss your options with you. So we've talked about the title of the workshop, and I've emphasized that there is a place for you, regardless of your existing skills and knowledge, regardless of where you're coming from, regardless of your previous career, regardless of your previous failings, regardless of your weaknesses and strengths, there is a place for you in information technology, within information management. There's definitely a place for you, so don't despair. Today we're going to look at the introduction and purpose of this workshop and of IT. What is information technology? We'll take a look at different information technology categories and roles. Then we'll do a summary, then we'll take some questions and we'll discuss responses, which I'd like everyone to be involved in. We've got a co-pilot volunteer. My husband's also definitely going to contribute when we talk about questions and answers. And I'd also like others to contribute, because although we've listed so many different careers here today, the fact is that I don't have extensive knowledge of some of those careers, like artificial intelligence, for example. Got a slide on that, but very brief writings on it, simply because it's not an area that interests me. It's not an area that I'm skilled in. I'm not a programmer. So I'd like to welcome everyone to try and contribute where you can. And then we'll take the conclusion and I'll then just say thank you to everyone, which I'm saying in advance. So we've mentioned frequently today that IT has continually evolved and it's come a long way from the days of the big machines and computers, from the days of massive mobile phones, from the days where someone like me would mistakenly pick up a mouse and point it at the screen. IT has evolved to the extent that a child, a 2-year-old child, learns IT, or even you may have children younger than that, where they're given a little phone to play with, and they instinctively just start pressing buttons on that smartphone, or they learn to take a picture of themselves. That is IT, and that's how far the industry has evolved. IT affects every human being in the world today. As a user or a consumer, electricity is powered by technology today. So the majority of human beings today consume electricity. Cars are powered by electricity today. Wireless technology in cars that enables cars to access the internet. Smartphones. So IT has turned the world into a global village where the majority of human beings, billions of humans, are connected through the internet. The internet is one massive network of computers. The internet is powered by billions of computers and computing devices, routers, switches. And today we'll just be talking about different IT careers for those of us actually considering a career. And as I keep saying, there is space for you and me. We'll take a 15-minute break at 11 o'clock, and then we'll take a half-an-hour lunch break at 12 o'clock. And then we'll power through until the end. Wikipedia states that IT, or information technology, is the application of computers and telecommunications equipment to store data, to retrieve data, to transmit, send data, and manipulate data, either within a business or within another enterprise. This definition was written a few years ago. But as I said earlier, nowadays, it's not just in the context of a business or another enterprise, it's also in the context of our homes. IT affects our homes more often than not today. You may have a smart TV, but the majority of you will definitely have a broadband router or a smartphone, which you're using today to access this workshop. So information technology connects us all. You're all connected to me today through an IT device, to this workshop today through an IT device. Without it, you wouldn't have been able to access this workshop. We'll be taking a look at these different careers, plus more. We'll be taking a look at enterprise and infrastructure architects, IT support, network engineering, security, information security careers, forensic examiners, pen test engineers, red, blue team and purple team engineers, cloud architects, stroke engineers, databases, data, business analysis, software and application architecture and development, Scrum, project management, operational resilience, which is a budding industry. Despite the number of careers listed here, there are still many more. Many, many more. So let's take a look at infrastructure careers. We've got service desk analysts, we've got technical support analysts, system admins, we've got solution architects, we've got IT management, network admin, stroke engineering, storage. Then we've got leadership, chief information stroke technical officers. Then we've got service delivery management. We won't talk about all of these disciplines, but we'll take some of these. What is enterprise IT infrastructure and administration? Enterprise architects, enterprise infrastructure management, or IT infrastructure management, or IT administration. We'll just say in summary, that's the design, implementation, maintenance, including automation or technical support, first line to third line, infrastructure management, and the decommissioning of physical components of the infrastructure, including servers. What is a server? A server is a computer. It's a computing device that may serve to store information. It may serve as a repository for administering accounts on the network using something like Active Directory, Microsoft Active Directory. A server may host a database. It may host a web application. It is a back-end system that serves as a repository, including for administering the network. We've got desktops, which our end users make use of. We've got laptop devices, as the majority of us may be accessing this workshop from today. We've got tablets, networking components. That's what the enterprise IT infrastructure people will support. We've got storage components that enterprise architects may manage. Then we've got hosting facilities such as our data center. Our enterprise and infrastructure architects may be responsible for our data center, including our on-premises or cloud-based systems. Let's take a look at the enterprise architect. Please raise your hand if you have a question virtually. Just raise your hand virtually and I'll just pause to take questions as well as we go along. So the enterprise architect, they're responsible for determining the architecture of an organization and for designing the network or infrastructure required within an organization. So if an organization says, okay, here are our business goals. For the next year, we need to expand by 5%, which means that, and we also want to venture into the customer relations market, for example. An enterprise architect will determine the architecture and the infrastructure needed to help the business to meet those stated goals. They may recommend, okay, we need to actually purchase Microsoft Dynamics CRM, because we've talked about expanding within the customer service market. They will also document systems processes using different models, such as TOGAF, They have first-hand experience in developing and building models, infrastructure models. So they will draw and design an infrastructure. So imagine a building architect. They draw plans, they design plans for a home, for a building. Your enterprise architect designs plans for the infrastructure. So if you've done some renovation work on your house, on your home, or when I say renovation, I'm talking about an extension where you've had to submit an application for planning permission, or if you built a home from scratch, maybe in the UK or abroad, you've actually built your own home, designed it, it would be an architect that would draw up all the plans for you to submit to the town planning department, same as the enterprise architect. The business states its requirements. We would like to do this in the next year, in the next 3 years. The enterprise architect will draw up the plans for the systems required. And one framework or enterprise architectural model is TOGAF. Many enterprise architects are certified in TOGAF. The designs and drawings that the enterprise architect produces has to meet the business requirements. They don't just go and draw things that they think the business might need. The business states its objectives and its goals, and then the enterprise architect will produce drawings that meet those requirements. They're responsible for designing an architecture that actually explains to senior management that this is the current state of our architecture. This is, as it is today. And then also responsible for maintaining architecture drawings of where we would like to get to or to be. This is where we need to be in 3 years' time if we're going to deliver the business strategy. So the senior management team will come up with a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan strategy. And then the enterprise architect will design an enterprise architect drawing that says, if you want to meet those goals in the next 3 to 5 years, then this is where our infrastructure needs to be as well. And that's why we say that all the drawings need to be aligned with the organization's overall strategy, the organization's overall plans for the future and for the current day as well. What does the solutions architect do? So again, they're similar to the enterprise architect, but they're more along the application side and the systems side. So the enterprise architecture has a more broader, they have a broader view of the entire enterprise's needs, whereas the solutions architect may have a view of, say, the company says, we want to expand our messaging system, or we want to expand our wireless infrastructure. The solutions architect will just go and produce a design of the wireless infrastructure. So the enterprise architect has a broader view of a 3-year or 5-year strategy. The solutions architect is there to work on solutions potentially for specific applications or systems. However, please note that some organizations may use these titles interchangeably, where they say they need a solutions architect to come in and draw up plans of the architecture needed for the next 3 to 5 years. Some of their responsibilities, though, involve working with tech and change project managers to ensure that if a project is started, for example, to upgrade the email servers within the business, the solutions architect will make sure that once they designed the new email messaging system, once they designed the end-to-end solution at the beginning, these are requirements, we want to actually upgrade our messaging system, solutions architects will go away and draw up a design of the new messaging system. They will then work with tech and the change project management team to make sure that when the solution is delivered at the end of the project, the solution delivered, the new messaging system actually aligns with the requirements document and the design that was drawn up from the onset of the project. So Emmanuel has said there that solutions architects produce designs and then they implement what the enterprise architecture has proposed or what the business has proposed. So that's absolutely correct. They make sure that what has been proposed is delivered, is what is delivered. So from the beginning of a project to implement a solution like a messaging system or a CRM, customer relationships management system, from the beginning of the project, where requirements are being drawn up, the solutions architect will be heavily involved in the drawing up of the requirements document. The design and then the drawing up of the requirements document, they gather the requirements, they draw up the proposed solution, and then they maintain that involvement with tech and the change project manager and architect to make sure that the outcomes delivered at the end of the project, during the project actually, and at the end, are consistent with the original solution. So the enterprise architect, actually, if you want to understand the difference, the enterprise architect may not be as hands-on as you actually think they might be. They may not be hands-on. Whereas the solutions architect will be more hands-on and they will work with technology and change to make sure that the outcomes delivered are consistent with the original solution. Cloud computing. What is cloud computing? Can anyone just let us know what cloud computing is within the chat window? What is cloud computing? I'll give us a moment to just write in the chat what cloud computing is. Okay, thank you. We've got managing data in the cloud, but what exactly is cloud computing? What is cloud computing? My co-pilots, I had quite a few volunteers at the beginning of this workshop to co-pilot along with me. Yep, using resources for faster computing. It's computers that are interconnected with each other. Helen, thank you. The ability to access computer resources via the internet, via the web. Yep, thank you. Anyone else? What is cloud computing? So I like Helen's definition. It is the ability to access interconnected computer resources. And Chin has added for data, solutions, and storage. Yep, so interconnected computers that we use for data solutions and storage, and that we're able to access on demand. We're able to access these systems on demand as and when we need them. We can actually go to a cloud computing provider and request more storage, more memory, or applications on demand. And when we don't need those resources, we can then say we no longer need as much storage, or we no longer need as much memory or as much processing power, our CPUs. So it's the on-demand availability of computer resources. What is the advantage of being able to access these resources on demand? Well, traditionally, when I first started out in IT, we used to have infrastructure within our organizations. And if you needed to upgrade, let's say a company needed to upgrade from 2,000 staff to 2,500 staff, they would need to buy more servers, more storage, more memory, more processing power. They would buy that, invest in all of that, and then in the event that the company experienced a downturn and had to make those 500 staff redundant, they would be stuck with the new memory and new hardware that they'd purchased. However, with the advent of the cloud, we're now able to request within the cloud with our CSP or cloud service provider, we're now able to request more storage, more memory, more hardware for when we're increasing our headcount. And then when we're reducing our headcount, we can then simply say to our cloud service provider, okay, we need to now reduce our memory and our storage because we don't need as much anymore as what we used to use. So that's what we mean when we say on-demand availability. We can request for more storage by simply accessing our control panel with our cloud service provider. And we can just as easily request for less storage. So we're only paying for what we use. And that's what we refer to as metered usage of the cloud. We only pay for what we use. And if our usage goes up for 1 month, then we pay extra. If it goes down, the next month, we only pay for what we use. So that's what the cloud has offered over the years. And there are many careers within cloud computing. A cloud engineer would configure the cloud system. For access, you may have a cloud security engineer that secures the cloud infrastructure. You may have your cloud practitioners who manage the relationship between the cloud provider and the business. You may have the cloud engineer who configures the cloud solution, configures the infrastructure. Or if you're purchasing platform as a service, for example, platform as a service is purchased for organizations that may want to use one of the cloud provider solutions to stream services such as Netflix. Netflix offer a streaming service from within the cloud. So they would lease a platform to stream their services from one of the large cloud providers, such as AWS, that is Amazon Web Services, or Azure, Microsoft Azure, or we've got Google Cloud as well. Those are the three main players in the cloud industry, and one can be a cloud engineer, a cloud practitioner, cloud security engineer. Cloud computing offers many careers where one can be engaged in life cycle management, ensuring that the cloud platforms remain supported and that they're decommissioned. That is replaced where there's a legitimate need to replace the platforms, especially if you have a hybrid cloud solution where some of your information is hosted within the cloud provider's data center, and some of your data, your corporate data now, is hosted in your company's data center. Many of us have consumed the cloud. Many of us have inadvertently, I'd say most of us actually, have inadvertently become cloud managers. The majority of us here today are cloud managers or cloud consumers. Can anyone post in the chat window, please, where they think we may have actually used the cloud? Can any of us say what cloud services you use or you have managed? If you type in the chat window, please. Office 365, thank you, Emmanuel. any other services you and I may have consumed in the cloud and managed. Yes, Alexa, I actually didn't think of that. Thanks, Chin. Alexa, that is a service that some of us may have in our homes. I don't have it, but yes, that is a cloud-based service. Anyone else think of a cloud-based service that you and I may have consumed? Yes, back up your WhatsApp on your cloud drive, smart TV, Zoom, Dropbox. Thank you. Yes, keep those coming. But I thought that some of us may mention more common cloud services that we consume. Mega, okay. Still waiting for some more common. YouTube, okay, but still there are some more common ones that, yes, Apple Cloud. Yes, so what is Apple Cloud? What is Apple's cloud solution called? Email, yes, but what is Apple's cloud solution called? Anyone who has an Apple phone, and I don't want to state the name of the phone because otherwise we'll immediately start, you know, mentioning the name of, yes, iCloud. Thank you, Toyin. iCloud, that is a cloud solution. And many of us use iCloud on a daily basis. And that makes us cloud consumers. And if we receive an alert saying that our iCloud storage is running out, what can we do? We can simply request from Apple that they increase our storage. We can simply request that they increase our storage on our iPhone. And that's what's referred to as on-demand cloud services, because you simply just say, okay, I need to request more cloud storage. Not sure how many of us have done that. And once you request it, it simply just is given to you within a matter of seconds. So Google Cloud. We've got different cloud solutions that we consume. That's where you store all your photographs on your phone. In iCloud, if you use an iPhone, or Google Cloud. So we're cloud consumers and we don't know it, but we need to configure the security of our iCloud drive or our smartphones storage. We need to consider and configure that security, you know, for our iCloud drive, for our iPhone. So within the industry, cloud computing engineers configure the platform, or indeed, you can hire infrastructure from these cloud service providers. And cloud computing engineers may configure the virtual machines, the infrastructure that you hire. They may configure the security of the software as a service product. Office 365 is one that Emmanuel mentioned earlier. So cloud computing engineers ensure that new services are transitioned into the live environment smoothly and with minimal impact to existing services. So we've just said that if you own an iCloud, you can simply just request more storage. On an enterprise level, a cloud computing engineer will request more storage and then allocate that storage within the enterprise. Maybe the finance department needs 10% more storage. HR may need 30% more storage. That will be the responsibility of the cloud computing engineer who's working in infrastructure as a service. an infrastructure cloud computing engineer. Then we have platform as a service, and then we have software as a service. The software as a service engineer, cloud engineer, will manage Office 365 allocation or another software allocation. Cloud computing engineers or practitioners may help to define and write cloud computing policies and standards for the business. Now, one thing that is really common nowadays is that a lot of organizations tend to outsource their data to the cloud, thinking this will save us a lot of money. And then they end up promptly having to bring everything back in-house again, when they realize that the cost benefits may not materialize. So in essence, money should never be the primary or sole driver for outsourcing to the cloud. It should be a consideration, but a thorough business case should be made before outsourcing to the cloud. Should be made, presented to senior management with regards to the costs and the benefits and the disadvantages of outsourcing to the cloud. So a cloud computing practitioner needs to ensure that the architecture, the design of the cloud architecture and implementation allows for scalability, which is the ability to scale up and down in the event the business either expands or contracts. Same as on your mobile phone. You may find that you request from iCloud or from Google Cloud that you need more storage because the system says, oh, that your phone is now running out of space. Your iPhone is running out of storage space. So you request for more storage. And then at some point you think, I need to actually store all of these photographs on my laptop or on a removable drive. You can then store all that data on your laptop or on a removable drive, and then you may want to request that actually, I don't need as much storage from iCloud anymore because I've got this data, all these photographs on my OneDrive, for example, which is free. 1 terabyte of OneDrive storage is available once you purchase Office 365. So you may decide actually that I now need to scale down, same as within a company infrastructure. If you've got your data stored in archives, as a cloud engineer, your corporate data, you've got 50% of it archived off. As a cloud engineer, you may decide, okay, I need to now request, with the business's permission, of course, that we reduce our storage in the cloud. So these are things, these are responsibilities for the cloud engineer and cloud practitioner, ensuring that the architecture, design, and implementation allows for scalability to scale up and down, high performance, and resilience, ensuring that your cloud architecture provides for resilience, where if one data center or one cloud data center goes down, you've got your data split or replicated across 2 different zones in the cloud. so that if one site goes down, then at least you've got that backup that instantly comes up to minimize downtime. So these are responsibilities of the cloud engineer, the cloud architect, the cloud practitioner, to make sure that the design and implementation of the cloud solution that is presented and in use within that company allows for scalability up and down, high performance, and resilience. And also provides secure and cost-effective and repeatable or reusable infrastructure to the business. With cloud computing engineers, you need to be able to automate routine tasks, such as provisioning of user access and other maintenance actions in the cloud, as well as on premises if you've got a hybrid cloud solution in place. Maintenance, you need to make sure that maintenance actions such as deleting or archiving data in the cloud, that is automated, that you're not having to copy files and folders off one by one into archives. There needs to be automation in place, templates that can be provided by the cloud solution provider, or you can develop your own. Key management, that's the responsibility of a cloud security engineer, ensuring that your keys, your access keys to the cloud, that they are stored and they are encrypted, but that they're not stored within the cloud. So thank you, Ayode, for that brilliant question, which you've asked, where you said, what is the difference between a data engineer and a cloud computing engineer? And you've also asked the question, what are the parts I need to understand, or what is the path that I need to trail to become a cloud engineer? So I'll take both questions. First of all, the difference between a data engineer and a cloud computing engineer is actually in the name. As Emmanuel has said, a data engineer is someone who uses data analysis for operational or business purposes. They gather information and then they turn it into, they gather data actually. So they gather data from various sources and then they turn it into information. They analyze that data and turn it into information and provide it to the business and to management to help them to make informed decisions. Data, it's great to have data, loads of data available to you. You can have figures, you can have text available to you, numbers and text. But until that data has been converted into information, transformed into information, it's not really useful to anyone. So a data engineer, data analytics engineer, they will actually gather information. They will gather data from various sources, and then they will now use different tools, such as those that my husband, Emmanuel, has again said, Power BI, for example, Tableau, Looker BigQuery. They will use that to transform that data into information, to enable the business, to enable senior management to make informed decisions. On the other hand, the cloud computing engineer is literally there to focus on the cloud infrastructure and on the Office 365 or Office or the software as a service implementation across the business, or the platform as a service, the platform that is being used to render the cloud services, the infrastructure in the cloud. So we've said Netflix, for example, they will lease a platform from one of the big cloud providers, such as AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. They will lease a platform, and the cloud computing engineer is responsible for maintaining and upgrading that platform. They will lease infrastructure. A company will lease infrastructure, virtual machines, memory, CPU, processing power. A company may lease applications such as Office, Microsoft Office, Dynamic CRM, SQL databases. The cloud engineer is responsible for maintaining, supporting, upgrading those platforms. So hope that is clear. Now, what do you need if you want to become a cloud engineer? That is your second question. Most of these cloud providers, or the large ones at least, they have different certification paths. So with Azure, there's quite a few, Microsoft Azure now, there's quite a few free certifications that you can take with them, foundational certifications. They have Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, and you can sign up to Microsoft virtual training days. They have these virtual training days where you attend a 4-hour video session, and then you receive a free voucher for their exams, for their foundation exam. So they have Microsoft AI, Artificial Intelligence Foundation, they have Microsoft Azure Foundation, and a few more. And then you can then go on to advanced certifications with them. Azure practitioner, Azure security engineer, same as AWS. AWS has the practitioner exam, or they have the security path. I believe they may have other paths, which I haven't explored. Same as Google Cloud. They have their practitioner exam, then they have their security exam as well. So if you want to become a cloud engineer, I'd advise that you just go and take a look at AWS, Microsoft Azure, and then Google Cloud, and determine which of those, areas you like to focus on, right? And you may choose to focus on all of them. To become a well-rounded cloud practitioner. There's also some security exams or auditing exams for the cloud with ISACA and the Cloud Security Alliance. So you've got the CCSK, Certificate in Cloud Security Knowledge. That's an exam that is non-natural or non-natured. It's not for any specific cloud platform. So it's non-vendor specific. It's just a certificate in cloud security knowledge, what you need to know about cloud security and cloud governance and cloud risk. So CCSK with the Cloud Security Alliance, and then the CCAK, Certificate in Cloud Auditing Knowledge, with ISACA and the Cloud Security Alliance. So that's in response to your question, Isiaka, that what do you need to know to become a cloud engineer? Now, we also have on the infrastructure side, one of the other roles is a networks engineer, and they provide day-to-day support and administration for the network related issues. They design networks, including your wireless network, your local area network, your wide area network, that is connectivity between multiple offices, your wide area network connectivity between multiple offices and home users nowadays. It's the network engineers that will actually work on the design, including broadband or MPLS networks that are needed, anything needed to connect computers together would be done by the networks team. Local area network, that is a single office network. Wide area network, multiple offices, including your home users. They will design and in many cases configure not only the wireless network, they would also offer solutions for the virtual private network, the VPN connectivity between offices and between home users and the office, or between third parties and the office. Between the office and the data center, the networks engineers, they're responsible for the planning and configuration of that interconnectivity. They configure network alerts and they also monitor any alerts from network usage. They ensure that network availability is kept above the agreed SLA threshold, agreed with the business. If the business says that they're expecting 99% uptime, then the networks engineers would be supporting that requirement. And they will configure alerts on the various network systems, the switches, the routers, to alert them when an SLA is threatened, when a service level agreement is threatened, when that system appears to be failing, that router or that switch or that firewall. Networks would receive an alert and they will troubleshoot to make sure that that performance doesn't dip below, availability doesn't dip below 99%, which is the SLA, the service level agreement that has been agreed with the business. So again, we've talked about the different things that they deploy and they configure and support: the local area network, the single office, the wide area networks, including home-based computers, wireless networks, servers, routers, firewalls, load balancer hubs, making sure that network activity is spread across multiple networking devices, so that one network device, like a router or a firewall, isn't overloaded. The UPSs, those are the battery type devices that are installed. A UPS, that's a battery type device that is installed, and all the server and network devices are plugged into that UPS, so that in the event of a power cut, the system remains on until somebody switches them off, rather than the system suddenly cutting out. So those UPSs are really expensive, but they're there to preserve the life of network equipment, so that in the event of a power cut, the systems don't all just shut down. And then you find that you're not able to bring some of those up because of the sudden power cut. the longer the time that you require for those systems to remain up until someone turns them off, the more expensive your UPS will be. So if you need a UPS, if you need your systems to remain available for an hour before an engineer can rush to the data center or to your office basement where the server equipment is, where your data center is, if you need the systems to remain up for an hour, for somebody to race there and turn everything off gracefully, then you will pay more for that UPS than if you need it to be, you need the systems to remain up for 15 minutes. If you have an engineer that lives 15 minutes away from the data center, then you can afford to buy a UPS that will keep the energy on and the systems on for half an hour. And that UPS will cost you less than a UPS that has a battery life of an hour. So networks engineer, they design and then they configure all of these network devices. And they make sure that they test all these devices from time to time to make sure that they're still in working order. Service management careers. Now, there are many, and I'm not going to talk through them all, as I said earlier. I'll just talk about some of these different careers, but you can always read up on the rest, and then you can give me a call if you want to discuss any careers that we haven't mentioned today. Here are some examples of service management roles. We've got service delivery management, where the service delivery manager is concerned with the service level agreements, making sure that all the internal operational level agreements agreed between businesses. For example, if IT says to the business that we will maintain a 99% uptime of all financial systems with the CFO, for example, then service delivery management would be responsible for ensuring that that SLA agreement is signed, and then that if there are any problems with regards to keeping that agreement, then they would hold meetings between IT and finance to make sure that a solution is being worked on to ensure that those systems can maintain that agreed uptime. Service delivery management, they work largely with external vendors though, between external vendors and the business. They hold regular meetings with or periodic meetings, should I say, with the third-party vendor to discuss SLAs, to discuss any planned changes to the service. They're involved in contract management as well. Change management, let's just take a look at some of these roles, but change management, they're responsible for ensuring that approved changes, that changes are submitted, change requests are submitted for approval, and then that approved changes have test plans submitted along with the change request and rollback plans, so that in the event the change doesn't work, the systems don't work after the change has been implemented, that there is a rollback plan to restore the systems to how they were before the change was implemented. Change management would also review emergency change requests, which may be submitted a day before or on the day of the change that is being requested, or even may be submitted after the change has been implemented. Emergency change management. So change management, they consider the changes and then they sign off on these changes, approve these changes, sometimes in advance, but sometimes retrospectively after an emergency change has been implemented. And if you're interested in a career in service management, then you need to consider the ITIL, ITIL, IT infrastructure library certifications. Release management, similarly to change management, they work with change management quite closely actually with regards to releases, systems, upgrades, software upgrades, patches, they approve all of those. Then you've got the service desk, you've got problem and events management and incident management. So service delivery manager, as I said, we'll discuss a few of these in depth. The service delivery manager, they lead on IT incident management and event management. They may lead on requests for changes and service transition. So if a service is being changed, if a new system is being implemented, a new system is being brought into the infrastructure. So they've done all the project planning, they've done everything, and then the changeover is this Saturday, for example, or next Saturday. IT is going to implement a new email system. So the service is going to transition from the old email system to a new one. Service delivery management will be involved to make sure that the transition goes smoothly. They're non-technical. So for the delegate who mentioned this morning that they're not technical, as I said then, I'm repeating now that you don't have to be technical to work in IT, to find a career, a niche for yourself in IT. Service delivery managers, they also work towards improving service levels, the service provided from or by external IT service providers. They also undertake reviews of any current service levels agreed, and they develop improvement plans. So let's say that we've agreed with a company in our previous contract, our previous three-year contract, that we would be happy to maintain 98% uptime. The service delivery manager at the end of the term or towards the end of the 3 years will be working towards potentially improving that service level to possibly 99% uptime. And whilst the contract is ongoing, for example, in year 1, service delivery manager, they'll be holding periodic meetings with the vendor or with the internal IT team to see where SLAs, service level agreements, haven't been met. And let's say a system, we've agreed 99% uptime and it's persistently fallen below 90%, then they'll be working with IT or with the vendor to develop improvement plan to ensure that those SLAs are met, that those service level agreements are met. Service delivery manager, if internal, they may be working with problem management to ensure that escalated issues are fixed. What is a problem? What is the difference between a problem and an issue? Can anyone actually write that in the chat window, please? The difference between a problem and an issue. I'll just give us a few moments to write the answer to that in the chat window. The difference between a problem and an issue. Thank you for that, Emmanuel. A problem is a recurring issue. Yes, an issue that recurs or reoccurs frequently. So the service desk may receive a report of an issue with someone saying, I can't log in to my laptop today, I can't log into the network. That is an incident or an issue. Now, if 10 individuals report that they can't log in the space of 5 minutes, then that is now a problem because it's now affecting more than one person. If 500 individuals report in the space of 5 minutes that they can't log in, again, that is now a problem. When the initial user reported it, it may have appeared to be a minor issue. So I'm saying this to Nonya now, that when one person reports an incident, I can't log in, that may appear to be a minor issue or a minor incident. But when 10 people, 30 people start reporting the same issue or the same incident of being unable to log in, that now may be escalated to become a problem. Indeed, you may have one person unable to log in, and that may actually be a problem. In the event that, let's say, for example, finance, they're required to submit, finance is required to submit the financial report or transaction reports to the regulator today at 9 a.m. If they don't submit it by 9 a.m., then the company may be fined. If that user, the main user who's got all the reports on their system, is unable to log in at 8:50 a.m., that is a problem, even though it's just one user. So a problem, an issue that affects one user may be a problem. Even though it may appear to be minor, it may be a problem all the same. A problem is an issue that needs a solution or a workaround. So thank you for that. A problem is an issue that needs a solution or a workaround. A problem is actually an issue or an incident where a known solution needs to be found to it, a workaround needs to be found. The root cause is unknown. So problem managers, they actually deal with escalated incidents. An incident that needs the root cause identified and a workaround provided. A problem is an issue that needs a solution, needs a workaround, needs the root cause identified, and that's what problem managers deal with. Service delivery manager, they ensure continuous improvement through regular feedback mechanisms and staff engagement. They talk to staff, they talk to suppliers. So Emmanuel has said, a workaround is put in place for an incident, an issue, whilst a problem needs the root cause analysis. Yes, so a workaround may be put in place, a workaround being a quick fix, may be put in place for an incident or an issue while a problem needs the root cause analysis. That is very true, very true. And sometimes a problem, the business may decide, or the service desk may decide, or service delivery may decide to provide an instant workaround to deal with the immediate needs of that user. So again, remember I said that the CFO may be unable to log in to their computer to submit an urgent report to the regulator. If they don't submit that urgent report, then the business gets fined. That is a problem. The fact that they can't log in, the fact that they have been unable to log in, you know, like for the past 1 hour or so, the business may decide, service delivery may decide to provide a quick workaround, and then will investigate and identify the root cause later. So they may decide, okay, we need to go and get someone else, you know, from storage to log into the storage area network or the backup drives and retrieve last night's copy for us to be able to submit this. That is a workaround, a quick fix. And then the problem as to why the CFO has been unable to log in for the past hour or so would then need to be investigated later. So problem management, very interesting career options there that don't necessarily require you to have IT skills. Service delivery management involves maintaining and managing the relationship with external IT service providers and leading on the supplier management of the provider, identifying areas for improvement, increasing the service provided whilst ensuring that the business reaps value for money, that they're getting what they paid for essentially. That's a career option. And for you to become involved in service delivery management, you may want to actually consider ITIL, the IT Infrastructure Library certifications. Service desk analyst, that's a role, providing first line support, being the face of IT to the business. And in some cases, they may provide second line investigative support of incidents and service requests that come in via phone, email, via chat nowadays. They may provide first line support for Microsoft Office system. Or a user may ring up and say, I can't receive emails. My emails aren't coming in. If it can't be resolved by first line, then it's escalated to second line. First line may deal with incident management mainly, whereas second line may deal with problem management, where second line are required to actually investigate and identify the root cause of incidents and problems that have been escalated to them. Service desk analysts, they're required to log tickets and service requests within the service management tools. And there are many service management tools, including ServiceNow and others. And they're not hard to learn or use. Service desk, they will own IT tickets. And they're required to communicate with second line, with the user, with the business, with external vendors in some cases, until the ticket is due to be closed once a solution has been found. So second line, problem management may not actually talk with users. Communications may all be channeled through first line, where problem management or second line may just update the tickets. That this is what we've done, this is what the root cause is, and they leave it to the service desk analyst to communicate back to the end user and to then close the ticket. The service desk analyst may be responsible for joiners, movers and leavers, account management, end user account management. So disabling user accounts. They may be responsible for changing the permissions of users or moving users between different groups if they move across the company, moving them within different groups within Active Directory. Terminating their accounts, disabling their accounts when they leave the business. In some companies, a lot of this is automated though. Or in some cases, service desk analyst roles are being replaced by self-service tools so that a user can actually log into ServiceNow and request for XYZ. I need this service. I need this application installed on my PC. I need this, I need that. But there are still service desk analyst roles out there. Incident management. So this is part of the ITIL. The incident manager is responsible for managing incidents. That actually requires them to, first of all, identify what an incident is and what an incident is not, according to the company policies. The company may have thresholds for saying this is an incident. For example, if 500 or 50% of the workforce can't log in, and they keep repeatedly getting locked out of their accounts each time they try, then that may be an incident. It may be that there's been an outbreak of malware on the network. So there will be an incident management policy in place, and that policy will give examples of what an incident is and what an incident is not. If 10 users are unable to log in, then that's not an incident. Even if the CFO is unable to log in to submit applications or to submit finances or a report to the regulator, that is not an incident that would qualify for the whole incident management process to be invoked. So the incident manager will identify what an incident is and then validate and justify any reported major incidents. And they would also manage their workload by pushing back where a senior manager, for example, says, I can't actually do this. So we need to invoke the full incident management procedure. They may need to actually say, no, this does not meet the threshold for an incident. This is an issue or a problem, but it's not a major incident. The incident manager is responsible for convening the necessary stakeholders to deal with that incident. They may be required to bring in subject matter experts, dependent on the incident. If it's an outbreak of ransomware, for example, then they need to bring in the CISO. They may need to bring in the vendor to your messaging gateway that has been affected by a ransomware. They may need to bring in a third-party provider. So the incident manager is responsible for stakeholder management and convening of incident service-specific stakeholders to deal with that incident. If the ransomware has affected the entire finance team or their systems, then the CFO would need to be brought in to the incident operational room or the war room. Third parties, the incident manager would be responsible for collaborating and directing the key stakeholders to ensure that the impact of the incident is minimized. Say, for example, it's a ransomware outbreak infecting finance or affecting finance, then the incident manager would be working with information security, with the engineers, with the CISO, with everyone to try and ensure that that incident is contained, that that ransomware is contained to the finance team and that it doesn't spread. They'll also be working, the incident manager will be working with the different stakeholders to restore services within the SLAs that have been agreed previously. So if finance has agreed a 99% uptime, the incident manager will be working with information security to try and ensure that the ransomware is removed or that a backup plan is implemented so that finance are able to continue to work within that 99% uptime agreed in the SLA. The incident manager, or in some companies, they're referred to as event managers, they provide management of all priority 1 and 2 incidents or major incidents. They also may work with other teams, with the project manager, product owner, everybody, to ensure that the resolution of the incident remains within the SLA. As I've said earlier, they act as a key interface between the business and IT. And the incident manager would also be responsible for ensuring that accurate and up-to-date information is available to the senior management team and the customer or end user during the incident, throughout the incident, and once the systems have been restored. The incident manager may also be responsible for leading on any lessons learned meetings once the incident is over. One of the rather important roles of the incident manager as well is to collaborate with communications to ensure that a comms subject matter expert is the sole person responsible for sharing information, both internally and to the public and the media, so that you don't have staff. Maybe if it's a major incident, that the building has to be evacuated and all of that, and you have staff going home, and then you have someone from the media popping up and asking, you know, just a normal member of staff, asking them for their comments or what are their thoughts. There needs to be something already in the incident management policy that needs to be reinforced during an incident, that no one should speak publicly or share rumors or gossip about the incident. Nobody should speak to the public or the media besides the comms team. So this is the responsibility of the incident manager, to manage stakeholders during an incident and after an incident. They may also be responsible, crisis manager, incident manager, event manager, they may also be responsible for managing and leading on your scenario test days, where the company is testing incident management processes, making sure that in the event of a real incident, they're able to actually respond and respond efficiently and effectively. So we have data and database careers, and there are multiple roles within database architecture, administration, and management. And one fact that I've realized is that everyone tends to talk about cyber. I want to go into cyber. I want to go into IT. I want to go into security. But there are many other roles that are equally thriving careers. So we've got the DBA, database administrator or analyst. We've got database engineers. We've got database architects who draw up the design of a database. We've got the data analyst, data engineer, database manager, data scientist. We've got the business intelligence analyst. We've got database developers. And all of these professionals are responsible for the design, implementation, maintenance, decommissioning of databases. They're also responsible for data analysis. They're responsible for artificial intelligence and machine learning if they're a data engineer. Let's take a look at some of these careers. What does the DBA do, or database manager? Well, their responsibilities may include the design, building, management, and decommissioning of software components used for databases and data warehouses. Data warehouses are there to store big data, massive data. So imagine an organization like Netflix that streams films. They'll store millions of films, if not billions of films. Their databases must be massive, so they would store their data in a data warehouse. They would also hold the subscription data of their millions of subscribers, TV channels. So their databases would be stored in what we referred to earlier as a platform as a service or a PaaS solution within the cloud in a database. Some databases include MS SQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, IBM Database 2, DB2, and then Sybase. So these are different databases that the DBA may actually administer or develop scripts for. The DBA builds new databases. They ensure that the database designs will result in high levels of performance and reliability. So they make sure that the database design that the architect produces will result in high levels of performance and they will be reliable. The database architect will also install the database, or that may be the DBA, the database administrator, and they'll also apply upgrades to the databases, patches. They lock out, so the security policy, they will make sure that the security of the database is configured. That tends to be performed, the security of user access, database user access and things tends to be performed by the database administrator rather than the InfoSec administrator. The InfoSec administrator will actually configure security for all the users across the business. But in many cases, a database, for example, will require separate database user permissions to be configured. And that responsibility would lie with the DBA. The DBA may also be responsible for designing and testing the recovery of the database and the backups of the database. They'll be responsible for configuring the backups of the database within the database solution itself. They may also be required to configure a database cluster for load balancing to spread the load of the processing of the database information. So imagine an organization, an e-commerce company such as Amazon. This is an Amazon Web Services now, the cloud solution, but Amazon itself, the marketplace. Imagine Amazon that serves millions of customers globally every day. They would have multiple database servers for their customer orders. They will have multiple multiple product servers as well, database servers. They won't just have one product database server. They will have clusters of databases containing the same information. Can anyone suggest why that might be within the chat window? Why might Amazon have multiple e-commerce servers serving all the users? If we say that in the chat window, please, why might Amazon have multiple copies of their servers? Multiple copies of their product servers, databases. Why might they have multiple instances, multiple servers? And why might the database? Availability, yes, availability to spread the load. Thank you. High availability or availability, yes, to spread the load. Because if they've got millions of customers globally accessing that same product information, it's not as if I want to order a toaster from Amazon today, that nobody else will be accessing that product database to order that same toaster at the same time as me from somewhere else across the world. So that product database needs to be available 24/7, in which case Amazon will have multiple product servers. And that's what's referred to as load balancing, so that one server isn't overwhelmed. the load is spread across different servers, and a database administrator, architect, or analyst may be required to configure the load balancing, configure clusters, database clusters. The DBA, architect, or analyst may be required to monitor the databases and fine-tune or tune those systems, the databases, to improve the end user experience. And they also manage storage, making sure that the database logs and the databases themselves, that the storage never becomes too full to continue to serve the customers. Yes, and Noye just said something really valid there, business continuity. That's why load balancing is important, business continuity, so that if one of the systems fails, then the second system or the third or the fourth in the cluster will take over automatically, so that the customer doesn't experience the non-availability of that system, that database. And Helen also mentioned that if customers are in various regions in the world, then yes, there may be a need to ensure that customers from different regions are able to access the nearest server to their location. And there's also data privacy regulations to take into account nowadays. Data privacy regulations, where with the GDPR, for example, data can't be stored in databases outside the EU for EU residents unless it's in a company that has a third country status. So capacity management of storage, very important. That's one of the responsibilities of the database administrator or analyst, making sure that the logs and the databases themselves are not too full to service customer or user requirements. The data scientists. Now, these people apply data modeling and software engineering best practices, quantitative methods. They actually are programmers, data visualization, to help the company to build self-service data tools. So remember we said earlier that in some cases, a company may actually implement self-service help desk tools, so that instead of a user requesting that the service desk help them to change their password, they're actually able to log in to a database with the front end system configured to enable you to reset your password yourself. So data scientists, they can actually develop these self-service data tools. They also help a business to interrogate data and perform data analytics. Now, what did I say about data? Remember I said earlier that data that hasn't been analyzed, interrogated, and analyzed is of no use to a company. It's of no use to the business. Data that has been interrogated and analyzed is then transformed into information and served to senior managers, served to business heads, served to users, And it's the information, it's the transformed data that has been presented as information that helps the business to reach informed decisions, that helps management to reach informed decisions. If the data scientist or data analyst has interrogated the data, they've performed their analytics, and they've now presented to the senior management team that, okay, that last year we had 50,000 users or subscribers. This year, we've now experienced a 5% reduction in our subscribers. And out of that 5%, 10% have come from a certain region. It's data that has been transformed into information to help senior management or the business to start to do something with that information. And it's the data scientist's responsibility to provide that interrogation of the data and provide information to the business. Data scientists, they may be involved in artificial intelligence, natural language processing, developing bots, chat bots, and things like that. They interact with business stakeholders. They first gain an understanding of the business problems and opportunities, and then they translate them into solutions based on the research into the data that has been gathered. They can actually use information that they've analyzed to predict future performance and to improve business processes. I worked with a data scientist from my background of 2 years ago, I think it was, up until last year, September or so, worked with this business analyst, and he was just highly intelligent. And that's exactly what he did, would gather data from an ongoing research exercise that the DWP was conducting at the time on the project. And then he'd use it, remodel that data, and then just say, okay, that I predict that XYZ, that this is what's going to happen next week. This is the number of users that will sign up for this. This is the number of users that will sign up for XYZ. So data scientists are highly intelligent developers. They need programming skills, and they need analytical skills as well. Now we're moving naturally into development, software application architecture and development. That is the development and building of software and solutions by coding using various programming languages, not limited to Python, .NET, C#, C++, PHP, Java, JavaScript, UI, user interface and user experience, graphical user interface design, blockchain, many different programming languages or application development languages. We have front-end developers, back-end developers, full stack, application developers, software engineers. So let's take a look at some of these. Front-end developers, what do? They develop websites and the user interfaces. Languages that they may need to know, well, they definitely need HTML, some need JavaScript, some need, and then you need CSS, then React and TypeScript. Now, when we say the front end, what do we mean by the front end? Again, let's use an e-commerce company, Amazon, as an example. Amazon has their website. So when you need to order something, you visit their website. Their website is developed by the front-end developer. What you see is developed by the front-end developer. The boxes you click on are developed, or the buttons you click on the website are developed by the front-end developer as well. So they develop websites and user interfaces using HTML, JavaScript, CSS, React, and TypeScript, and other languages and tools. Back-end developers, they develop the back-end applications and databases using programming languages such as PHP, Python, Oracle, MS SQL, PLSQL, and MySQL. Now, if you remember, I've just said a split second ago that front-end developers on an Amazon website will develop what you see. But when you take a look and consider the fact that when you place an order for a toaster, you click on a button on Amazon's website, the product information that is now served to you comes from a back-end database. The pricing information is stored in a back-end product database, and it's the responsibility of the back-end developers rather than the front-end developers to develop these applications and databases that serve up that product information to, for example. So back-end developers develop the back-end applications and databases, and these are some of the programming languages that they use that you need to learn if you're interested in becoming a back-end developer. And then the full stack developers develop both the front-end websites. They're able to develop front-end websites and back-end applications and databases. And they use all the tools that we've stated here, plus more. They learn and know how to use all these tools and applications plus more. Business analysis. What does a business analyst do? They mainly support the facilitation of software development. So if there's a software development project, then they will support the facilitation of the entire SDLC software development lifecycle process or phases. A business analyst needs to develop working relationships with business stakeholders. You need to be able to develop those relationships to understand what the current process is. What is the current process? What are the users doing now? What are the tools that they're doing now, that they're using now? What is the state today? So they develop working relationships with the business to understand current processes, systems, and data to identify opportunities for improvement. They work with stakeholders at various levels of seniority. So we need to understand how to manage our stakeholders and work with them. And project team members. So you've been invited to, or you've been employed to be a BA on a software development project. You need to be able to develop those working relationships, work with different stakeholders and project team members to support the design, development, testing, implementation, and close down activities during that project. A BA will lead requirements elicitation processes on projects. They'll be responsible for defining the business opportunity and the problem, documenting what the problem is. What is the problem? What does the business need? Not what you think the business needs as a BA. What does the business think it needs. You may be providing guidance. Okay, have you considered this? Have you considered that? But you're eliciting, you're trying to find out what the business needs from stakeholders. And then you document those requirements. Once those requirements have been documented, the BA would then validate those requirements with stakeholders. Okay, here's what I hear and think you need from my requirements elicitation with the business, with stakeholders. Here's what I believe I've heard you say you need. When you're validating those requirements, you're saying, have I heard you correctly? Have I understood the problem correctly? In the requirements documentation, have I considered everything? Have I understood what the business needs correctly? And then the BA will gain the approvals for those requirements. And then they manage the change processes for documentation, support the product owner during agile projects, and they facilitate the backlog management of what hasn't been done versus what has been done. What have we actually delivered on this project? From this project, have we delivered the front end but not the back end on this project? What has been delivered? What hasn't been delivered? They make sure that they facilitate that backlog management. What needs to be done during this sprint, 2-week sprint? What needs to be delivered, and make sure that that is delivered. Requirements validation, as we've said. Ensure that there is a clear requirements traceability throughout the life cycle of the project. What is that? That is so important. With the BA, need to make sure that at each phase of the project, that you can trace what is being developed during a sprint over the next 2 weeks. What is being developed? Can you trace it to what was written and documented in the requirements document at the onset of the project? Or are we going off track? Are we going off track, or are we still on track? Are we suddenly starting to deviate from what was actually documented in the requirements document from the onset of the project? So user stories, again, that's the responsibility of the BA, and they make sure that the users accept the product that's being developed, that's been documented, that they agree that this is what they need that will help them to do their jobs effectively. The Scrum Master. And this is a career that I said is really interesting, because the Scrum Master is an organizer, a facilitator. They're responsible for maximizing their team's ability to deliver value and hit the sprint goals, making sure that within the 2-week sprint, that the team delivers what has been agreed that they will deliver. The Scrum Master is a chief organizer. They'll make sure that their team gets what they need to do their job and deliver within the sprint windows. The Scrum Master is a servant leader, delivery manager, and a coach. So they will lead on the sprint. They will facilitate the sprint every morning, the daily stand-ups. Plan with their team what needs to be delivered. With the BA, they'll talk to the BA, they'll talk to the Scrum Master, other Scrum Masters and product owners. And then they will now facilitate, make sure that their team has what they need to deliver and they will help to unblock anything that may serve as an impediment to the team delivering their objectives or deliver deliver what they've been told to deliver within the sprint. So they just help, they facilitate. If the team says, I've got a problem because I've tried to get hold of XYZ, the product owner, and this may threaten this sprint if the product owner doesn't get back to me, the Scrum Master will note that down, and they'll be the ones ringing up and chasing up that product owner whilst letting the developer get on with their job. So they identify, manage, track, and remove any blockers or impediments at team level to ensure that their team progresses. And they call in for support from management and any stakeholder where that's required. They own and manage risks, issues, and dependencies at team level. And they work with other Scrum Masters, because there may be a Scrum Master for the development team, a Scrum Master for the BA team, a Scrum Master for the project management team, whatever. But they will work with other Scrum Masters and product owners just to make sure that their team delivers. They will chair the daily stand-ups. So facilitate rather than chair. They facilitate the daily stand-ups where the team meets maybe for 15 minutes. First thing in the morning, what do you need? Do you need anything today to do your job? No? Okay, move on to the next person. Do you need anything to do your job? Any blockers? Any progress? Any wins? Just a round table, brief round table, and the Scrum Master facilitates that. They also facilitate the sprint planning to discuss what needs to be delivered over the next 2 weeks, over the next sprint. And then at the end of those 2 weeks, they facilitate the sprint review. What did we deliver during the previous sprint? And what do we need to deliver for the next sprint? So sprint planning, sprint reviews. And they track and report on their team's performance, progress on goals, and value delivery. And they use management information tools, of course, to report on their team's performance. What qualifications might you need for a Scrum Master role? Well, there are two main organizations, actually. There's the scrum.org that offer 3 certifications. The PSM1, which you don't require experience to do that certification. Then they offer the PSM2 and the PSM3 for when you've got more experience. With the PSM1, you don't need to review or resit that certification anytime. That's with the scrum.org. There's also another certification body where you can sit the Certified Scrum Master, CSM exam, for which you need to resit that exam periodically. Don't remember if it's 2 years or 3 years. But the Scrum Master role is a very interesting role because you don't need to be technical. You just need to have leadership skills, servant leadership skills. Because if you don't have the buy-in for your team, from your team, they won't respond to you. So servant leadership skills, where you recognize that you are the servant in the team as well as the leader of that team. You won't be technical like the developers. So if you think that as a Scrum Master, you can go and be lording it over them and letting them know that you are their leader, you're incorrect. You need to be a servant and a leader. In the servant role, You're facilitating. They're telling you, I've got this problem. I can't get this. I can't book a meeting with that person. You're picking up the phone and you're booking that meeting on their behalf. So very interesting role there for those who are interested in a non-technical role. What is the product owner responsibility? They own the delivery of a product's strategy and roadmap. A product could be an application that is being developed or an application that is in use already. They represent the voice of the customer. They work with internal and external customers to understand their key needs from the application. They work with different stakeholders during the visioning and concept development. So when they're actually designing an application, the product owner or application owner will work with different stakeholders, including the users, to develop the concept of a product. They manage the internal comms on benefits versus key objectives and forecasts. What will the benefit, what might the benefit of this application be to the business? And they will play an active role during the sprint planning meeting, which is why I said that for the Scrum Master, they're not the leader of the product owner. The product owner won't report into the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master may actually not have any direct reports because you're a facilitator, just ensuring that everybody can do their job in your team, which will consist of product owners, developers, designers, making sure that they have everything they need to do their job. So play an active role during the sprint planning meeting in clarifying the product requirements and defining the subtasks that need to be carried out to deliver the user story. And they agree the product backlog, what has been done, what needs to be done, and they communicate dependencies with the other product owners to ensure that there's an alignment with other application owners. Project manager, again, they're responsible for representing the business on the project. They plan and design the project. They plan and design what the final outcome of the project will be. They monitor the progress of the project against agreed parameters. They identify key project risks now, not product risk, but project risks that may impede on the project's ability to be completed according to the timescales agreed, or the scope, or the quality of the final project deliverables. They resolve issues, project issues, and they initiate any corrective action, again, to make sure that the project is delivered to time, to the required quality and cost. They work with portfolio and program management teams within portfolio and program management teams and fit into the structure within the organization. They monitor the budget and expenditure. They appoint project staff, project support, project management staff into the project. And they liaise with any third parties, vendors, third parties and vendors that may be required to also contribute to the project, external companies. And they draft work packages. So they may split the project into work packages. The developers will do this. A third-party vendor may be required to come in and configure something. Users will test at some point. The project manager arranges all of that. And then they report to the project sponsor and other stakeholders in the RACI or comms plan. Security, information and infrastructure security roles. We've got the red team, blue team, purple team. We've got technology risk management, cybersecurity, threat vulnerability management, cybersecurity engineers and architects, risk analysts and managers, business continuity disaster recovery management, incident response management, SOC cert analysts, and more. Let's take a look at cyber and information security. We've got a 3 lines of defense model defined by COSA. First line of defense, they're actually the implementers. They do the information security work. They may be configuring systems, they implement the controls to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. They may be involved in network security, patching and monitoring, threat intelligence, incident response planning and management, intrusion detection and prevention, DR and BCP, risks and controls, RCSAs, risk and controls self-assessment. That is the responsibility of the first line of defense. They actually do the work. They do the doing, if that's such a sentence. Second line of defense, they challenge the first line of defense. Make sure that they're doing what they're required to do. They offer challenge to the first line of defense. Have you actually patched the systems to the agreed schedule in the policy? You've done your risk and controls self-assessment. Are your controls truly operating effectively? You've got a policy that states that you will patch your critical vulnerabilities within 30 days. Is that the case? Have you been patching your critical vulnerabilities within 30 days? So second line of defense, challenge. They're responsible for operational risk management, risk assessments and management, and controls testing as well. Challenging, as I said, the risk and controls self-assessment reports that have been produced by first line. Third line of defense actually audits the IT environment and controls, and they report to the board. So they report directly to the board on information security controls and vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Red team, blue team, purple team. Purple team is the blue and purple team, blue and red team combined rather. Whereas the red team, they're actually offensive experts that lead operations to test in-house targets. So they could include pen testers, for example, penetration testers. They could include physical security personnel who try to access a building undetected, try to access your data center undetected to test. They're testing your controls. Red team members are there to identify vulnerabilities. They build exploits. They may try to hack into your Active Directory systems to see if those are configured correctly. And after each red team engagement, they provide a report to the business saying, look, these are the vulnerabilities that we've identified. The blue team will defend against the red team. So the blue team will defend. When there's a red team exercise taking place, the blue team are not usually told. So the red team could consist of engineers from a different department, different set of different part of the business, or they could be pen testers that have been hired, penetration testers that have been hired, or ethical hackers that have been hired to try and actually penetrate your company's defenses The blue team are not usually told when these engagements take place. The blue team, usually your InfoSec or cybersecurity team, just are required to, every single day that they come into work, make sure that those defenses are in place. In some cases, companies will actually set off a match, for want of a better word, between the red team and the blue team, where the blue team are told, okay, this this team, the red team, is going to try and actually hack into this system, and the blue team are told that you're required to defend your system. But that's a red team. If you want to actually be an ethical hacker or penetration tester, that's a career for you right there. Threat intelligence experts, they lead a team's efforts to operate intelligence, to analyze threats. They focus on the latest tactics, techniques, and procedures being deployed by threat actors, by cyber criminals. And they'll be responsible for maybe considering, if you work in the financial services sector, you work in the public sector, you work in the NHS, you will have your threat intelligence team where they'll be considering attacks against the health sector, attacks against and threats against the financial institution or financial services sector. So this is what threat intelligence does. They will be researching, conducting research, reading on different types of threats. And then they produce their assessment reports. Okay, this is how vulnerable we are to these threats. And produce reports. They may be responsible for collecting qualitative and quantitative threat intelligence. Attend meetings, attend forums of similar companies in your industry where you may be discussing different threats. Have you heard that this new ransomware is coming out? And it's going to be targeted against the NHS, for example, like WannaCry. Threat intelligence, security research, open source intelligence collection and analysis. So if you use open source software within your company, free software, free applications, then threat intelligence may be required to actually conduct threat analysis. What is the threat to our business with this open source software that we've brought in? May be required to work with third-party companies that develop applications for you. That's so important. Third-party risk management, extremely important. Make sure that you're working with third parties if you're working in that industry of threat intelligence. Because in many instances, we have ransomware being deliberately or accidentally deployed in Trojans that have been put into applications developed by third parties that can bring your company down. So threat intelligence, very important there. Very important role. Vulnerability management, they scan the network, scan the infrastructure for vulnerabilities using different tools such as Qualys. They evaluate those vulnerabilities based on the risk and based on intelligence provided by the threat intelligence team. And then they prioritize those vulnerabilities and remediate them. They work with cross-functional teams throughout the business. Any exceptions, they handle them and they review risks. They buy, research, and procure vulnerability scanners and remediation tools. They may optimize, they may develop scan templates to make sure that the entire business systems are being evaluated, are being assessed for vulnerabilities. And they work with system owners. So let's say a vulnerability has been, a critical vulnerability or any vulnerability has been identified in the finance system or the HR system, then they need to work with the CFO, the HR manager, to make sure that those vulnerabilities are remediated. They manage web vulnerabilities as well, and cloud vulnerabilities, making sure that, again, that the company is not left exposed to an attack through a known vulnerability. You know that the network is weak in this way, in this manner. We know that this operating system that we're using is out of is out of it's out of use by the product by the product manufacturer, by the operating system manufacturer. Let's say, for example, you're still using XP within the business. Vulnerability management should know that Windows XP is no longer supported by Microsoft. So they would constantly be scanning for vulnerabilities, report to the business, this is no longer supported. And here are some vulnerabilities that we've been told about, some weaknesses, some gaps with this, security gaps with Windows XP. So we need to make sure that we're considering a move away from Windows XP. Privacy. This is a very interesting career option, especially for those interested in governance rather than technical IT. Let's say you've got a law degree, for example, you may want to consider privacy as an area to pivot to. There are many privacy regulations globally, including the GDPR, the UK Data Protection Act, and the data privacy officer or the data protection officer or analyst may be required to be registered with the ICO as the DPO. That's the Information Commission or organization in the UK. But then there are other global country data privacy offices that everyone, that each company needs to be registered with. If you're a limited company within the UK and you process personal data like the ladder back down, for example, then I'm required to be registered with the ICO and to ensure that I protect your data. So the data privacy officer is there to ensure that the personal data of every customer is protected. So they will work with first line, with IT, with information security to make sure that data protection is understood for personal data, credit card information, names, date of births, sensitive information, sicknesses that an employee may have. All of these, the data privacy officer is responsible for ensuring that personal data for any living person and sensitive information, credit card details, that they are all protected, adequately protected. They're responsible, the DPO is responsible for incident breaches, escalations, and reporting, because a lot of these regulators have mandates for reports of private data breaches to be reported to them within certain timescales. So data privacy, very interesting career option as well, and non-technical. GRC, we've got operational resilience, we've got risk management, third-party risk, cyber risk, regulatory risk, fraud risk, technology risk. Now, I often say that nowadays, the cyber criminal isn't going around with suitcases of money earned from fraud. It's usually done online nowadays. Online, fraud is conducted mainly online nowadays. Companies, individuals, senior managers are being defrauded through phishing campaigns, phishing attacks rather, and spear phishing attacks for senior managers. So operational resilience considers quite a lot, including business continuity management, disaster recovery, third-party risk management. That's another interesting career where you'd be leading on ensuring that essential outsourcing or the outsourcing of critical information is managed and secured adequately. Offshoring, again, taking into account privacy requirements for sending data, information out of the region. Third-party risk management, many considerations there. You also need to consider the interconnectivity between your company and third parties, making sure that those third-party companies that are connected to your network, that if they were to fail, if they were to experience a ransomware outbreak on your network, on their network rather, that it wouldn't also affect your company's network. Third-party risk management, you'd need to consider local regulations, including data protection regulations. And there's a new regulation across the EU. For those of you interested in third-party risk management, there's a new regulation called DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act. With the GDPR and the EU and the UK Data Protection Act, the GDPR is primarily responsible or about protecting personal data. The new DORA regulation that came into being on the 16th of January 2023, that is about managing cyber risk, including the risk of a third party causing a disruption to the EU financial institutions. So DORA, if you're interested in a career in third-party risk and you're based this side of the river or in the EU, you need to consider that new regulation, which you go and read up on it, DORA, Digital Operational Resilience Act. And organizations now have, financial institutions rather, now have 2 years to comply with the DORA regulation, which will now come into effect. It's come into effect already, but by the 17th of January 2025, organizations, financial institutions have to comply with that act if they're in the EU. Now, some of you may ask the question, does the UK need to comply? Do financial institutions in the UK need to comply with that? I'd suggest that you still read up on that regulation, because the PRA and the FCA, but the PRA, the Bank of England largely, which is the regulator for financial soundness of financial institutions in the UK, they may soon choose to implement a similar act to DORA, affecting UK financial institutions. Third-party risk management, you may also be required to get engaged in information security clauses within contracts. And you may be required to do third-party or suppliers assurance assessments of their returned information security questionnaires, which is referred to as due diligence. You're sending out questionnaires, and then you're now reviewing the answers within those questionnaires to make sure that the security posture of that third-party company meets the threshold to be onboarded as a third-party company, that they won't pose an unacceptable risk to your infrastructure if they were to onboard it as a third party. That's supply assurance due diligence. Again, very interesting career. If you're interested in any of these careers that we've talked about, please just contact me. Book an appointment on our Ladder Back Down website. Identity and access management. That's a career that involves supporting the implementation of centralized identity and access management solutions for the business on the network and in the physical. You can also talk about physical identity and access management, where you're working with building control to ensure that only those that need to access the building are issued with passes. Privileged access management, that is for privileged users such as IT, authentication and authorization systems, making sure that you have multi-factor authentication systems to enable people to be verified adequately when they want to log into the network. Identity lifecycle management, making sure that your joiners, movers, and leavers, that they are actually provisioned with access, and that access is re-provided or re-provisioned when they move to another department, and it is de-provisioned when they leave the business. Identity governance, having an IAM policy within the business. For this role, you need to understand the business requirements and the technical requirements. What does this user need? What does each user need to do their job? No more, no less. No escalated privileges, just enough access and privileges to do their jobs. The IAM analyst designs and implements IAM solutions, ensuring that there are appropriate controls and tools in place. Active Directory usually, to enable users to access the infrastructure promptly and correctly, with only the needed permissions to do their job. IAM may also be responsible for procuring single sign-on solutions that allow a user to sign on once and then to be able to access all the systems and applications they need to do their job. Forensic investigators, they conduct technical investigations, including securing and retrieving, in some cases, seized PCs and information and mobile data to facilitate an investigation. They may need to attend searches where necessary, where a warrant has been obtained to go to a home user's abode to pick up their PC, to investigate potential wrongdoing. They produce any documentation in relation to data retrieved from computers and the different media, maybe a mobile phone. And a forensic investigator would be required to present evidence in court and provide advice to police officers on the forensic computer analysis. So it's one thing to be able to gather all the evidence, but it's another thing entirely to be able to go and give expert witness in a court, to be able to give that expert witness in court. If a cyber criminal or an employee has done something wrong on their computer, you need to be able to give that expert witness to secure a conviction or to assist the investigation. Pen testers, they conduct pen testing on systems and networks, also referred to as Ethical hackers, they identify vulnerabilities in network environments. They may provide recommendations for the remediation of those vulnerabilities, and they may not. Create detailed reports of findings and present them to system owners. They need to stay up to date, as is the case with all information security or IT careers. Stay up to date with the latest trends, techniques, and tools in pen testing. In summary, there are plenty of career options for you to venture into, and we haven't talked through them all. You need to select a career that is based on your temperament, on your strengths, and your weaknesses as well, on your ability. If you don't like technical work, that is not a weakness. That is an aptitude. If you don't have an aptitude for technical learning, then don't go and do something technical, but there's still opportunities for you within IT. If you're patient and level-headed and you've got a high aptitude for learning, then you may want to consider programming or development if you're patient and level-headed. If you don't get stressed easily, then incident management, disaster recovery, things like that are for you. And if you're curious, if your natural nature is to be curious, you may want to consider a technical role where you get to implement and support different technologies on a day-to-day basis. But whatever you do, make sure you do it and you do it well. You learn everything you need to learn and you just do it well. Do it well and don't give up. Don't say because you've tried to get into that industry, if you know that that's what you really want to do, then persist. Keep learning. Don't stop learning. Don't stop learning because you've been refused entry into that industry because you haven't yet passed an interview and gotten your first job. And don't stop learning because you've been kicked out of an industry or kicked out of an organization or let go of from an organization or made redundant. Don't stop learning. Keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. Persist. Keep telling yourself that I've got this, I can do this. Everybody was a learner one day in the past. I'm a lifelong learner, so don't say that I was once a learner. But everybody that you see in a senior role or that is thriving in an industry or career today, they were once a newcomer to that industry. Nobody was born knowing security or understanding security. Nobody was born knowing how to use a computer. They've learned it. And then they've persisted until they've gotten a job. So you can persist equally and you will get that job.